Your call is very important to us. Please stay on the line and you'll be transferred to the next available agent.
$14.6 billion. That's billion, with a B. That's the amount of intended fraud uncovered in the 2025 National Healthcare Fraud Takedown, which is the largest in Department of Justice history. 324 defendants are charged, and of them, 96 were doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and other licensed medical professionals, people who took an oath to do no harm. The government seized $245 million in cash, luxury cars, cryptocurrency, and other assets. And here's the wild part. This was just one coordinated enforcement action. This happens every single year. The 2024 takedown, $2.75 billion. The year before that, similar numbers. We're talking about an industry where fraud isn't the exception. It's practically the business model.
So when we talk about healthcare fraud, you picture some sleazy guy in like a back office billing Medicare for wheelchairs that he's just never delivering.
Right.
And yeah, that happens a lot actually, but that's not the whole picture, because while the government is chasing down that $14 billion in outright criminal fraud, health insurance companies are legally denying billions more in actual legitimate claims. Yeah. They're using AI algorithms to automatically reject coverage. Bad ones. AI programs that failed AI classes and need to be held back a year. They're requiring prior authorization for treatments your doctor already said you need. They're playing a game of delay and exhaust, right? So they're betting that you will give up before they have to pay. And here's the big kicker. When people do appeal these denials, they win most of the time, which means the original denials were what exactly? Mistakes or a strategy? Because mistakes are usually 50-50. This is not that. I probably have a 50-50 chance of that 50-50 fact being right.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know.
Welcome back to Mugshot Mysteries. I'm Kathryn.
And I'm Gabriel. This is episode 2 of our series, The Cost of Health. Last time we covered the history, how American health insurance was invented during the Great Depression, how it accidentally got tied to employment during World War II, how Medicare and Medicaid came to be, and how HMOs and disco changed everything in the 70s. Also, how Lyndon Johnson used the power of D to help push things along.
Oh, my lordy. Not the throwback from the last episode I was hoping for.
It's the only one I remember.
Right. Okay. Well, today we're going to get into the really fun stuff. And by fun, I mean actually very deeply disturbing. We're talking about fraud, both the illegal kind and the technically legal but ethically questionable kind. We're talking about the phrase delay, deny, defend, and how it became an industry playbook. We're talking about AI systems making life or death coverage decisions. And we're talking about real people whose lives were turned upside down by insurance denials. And fair warning, some of these stories are going to make you outright angry. They made us angry. And we've been researching this stuff for weeks.
Yeah, B- students. Before we dive in, let's address something. We addressed it last time. Healthcare is political. There's no getting around that. Every decision about who gets coverage, what's covered, and who pays for it, it's ultimately a political decision. Should it be? No, absolutely not. And here's the thing. Frustration with the healthcare system is genuinely bipartisan. I don't care if you voted red, blue, black, yellow, like the Michael Jackson song, or if you didn't vote at all because you're not 65 and older. If you've ever gotten a surprise medical bill with threats of collections, fought with an insurance company over a claim, or even watched a loved one struggle to afford medication, you know this system has big problems. We're going to try to present this fairly. We'll point out where conservative concerns about government overreach are legitimate, We'll point out where progressive concerns about corporate greed are, again, legitimate. I hope that we can equally annoy all sides because, again, I see a system that's broken. I want to know how it gets fixed. And before that, we're going to talk about stranger than fiction stories that just reiterate the monster of a problem we're facing.
So let's start with the straight up criminals.
Now, if you're of a more conservative mindset, this is exactly the kind of thing that makes you skeptical of big government programs. Rightfully so. Medicare is a massive bureaucracy handling hundreds of billions of dollars, and where there's that much money, there's going to be people trying to steal it. And not even people in this country. Like, I mean, if there's going to be fraud, let's be good old-fashioned American fraud. Am I right?
You're right.
The argument for more market-based solutions is partly about reducing these kinds of opportunities for fraud. The idea being that private companies have stronger incentives to protect their own money than the government bureaucrats do with taxpayer money. And there's something to that argument. Private insurers do tend to be more aggressive about fraud detection when it's their bottom line at stake. Again, it's their job to make stockholders money like this is some Ayn Randian Santa Claus.
On the other hand, and this is where it gets a little complicated, private insurers also get defrauded constantly. That $900 million the supplemental insurers lost in the Operation Gold Rush, well, those were private companies. And some of the biggest healthcare fraud schemes in history have involved defunding private insurance, not just government programs. The fundamental problem isn't really public versus private. It's that healthcare involves massive amounts of money, complex billing systems that most people don't understand, and information asymmetries where providers know way more than the patient or insurers about what's actually necessary. Well, that's a recipe for fraud regardless of who's running the show.
So, you want me to tell you about another case?
Yes.
This one is absolutely wild. In July 2025, an Arizona couple pleaded guilty to causing over $1.2 billion in fraudulent claims. Now, let's find out how, because it's wildly hilarious,
What's
too.
with the billion? We're not even million. These people shoot like for the stars.
Oh, well, you know, if the money is there, the money is there.
All right.
And Alexandra Garrick and Jeffrey King ran companies that contracted with sales representatives, and I'm using big air quotes here, who had zero medical training whatsoever, right?
Of course.
So these sales reps would find elderly patients, of course, including hospice patients, sad, who had wounds at really any stage. I once said that when I was in the mortgage industry, you could hire a person who is dumb as a rock, but they could sell a Playboy to Hugh Hefner, which would be extra hard now that he's unavailable. But anyways, these are the type of people they hired here. Could be a tiny scratch, and they'd order amniotic wound grafts for them. But here's the scam. They were instructed to only order grafts in the size, specifically, of 4 by 6 centimeters or larger, even if the wound was much smaller because bigger grafts meant bigger insurance reimbursements.
Ugh.
They were applying these big old grafts to wounds that had already been healed, to infected wounds where grafts were counterproductive, to wounds that weren't responding to the treatment at all. Didn't matter. They kept billing like catheters. They picked the most random, cheap enough items they can order in bulk and make a good profit on it. I've seen how much medical bandages are. It's more than any rational person would think they are.
Well, here's what really gets me. They had nurse practitioner staff whose job was to apply these grafts. Actual medical professionals, let that sink in. And Garrick and King, who had zero medical training, directed these nurses to, quote, suspend their own medical judgment and apply all grafts ordered by the sales reps, even when it was medically unreasonable. These nurses knew it was wrong, and then they just went ahead and did it anyway. The couple made so much money that when the government seized their assets, they found bank accounts with over $68 million in them, 4 luxury vehicles worth almost $1 million, $22 million in life insurance annuities, plus, jewelry and precious metals, of course. And so from November 2022 to May 2024, less than 2 years, they billed $1.2 billion. They actually received $615 million in payments for fake wound care.
Which is just a ridiculous story. So
obviously.
These are obviously bad guys, right? Again, like the mortgage industry in the 2000s, when they were taking advantage of people and setting them up for future foreclosure, their justification is, well, the system allows this, therefore, we'd be dumb not to capitalize on it. I mean, if the system is this easy to manipulate, then really the system deserves to be exploited. It's easy to do these things when you think you're just screwing the man. But what's often forgotten is that this is not a victimless crime. This is clear-cut criminal fraud and also criminal negligence. Now, I want to pivot to something more uncomfortable. Isn't that a segue?
Great seg.
Because for every dollar stolen by outright criminals, there are arguably more of these dollars being extracted through practices that are technically legal, but let's say ethically ambiguous.
So, delay, deny, defend. If you've been following the Mangione case, you've probably heard this phrase. It was allegedly etched in the bullet casings found at the scene of Brian Thompson's murder. But the phrase didn't originate with Mangione. It came from a 2010 book by Jay Feynman, a professor at Rutgers Law School. This book was called Delay, Deny, Defend. The book was primarily about property and casualty insurance, car accidents, home damage, that kind of thing. But the strategies he described have become synonymous with health insurance practices too. Because the basic idea is this. Insurance companies make money by collecting premiums and not paying claims. So they've developed systematic approaches to avoid paying. First, delay. You want to delay the claim as long as possible. Maybe the claimant will die, give up, or accept a lowball settlement. Second, deny. You need to deny the claim, often on technical grounds that have nothing to do with whether the treatment was actually necessary. Third, defend. And you have to defend against any lawsuit aggressively, making litigation so expensive and time-consuming that most people can't afford to fight.
Can I just say this reminds me of the dentist system? Now,
Always sunny.
I want to be fair here, right? Because the insurance industry's perspective isn't entirely without merit. Their argument goes something like this. Healthcare fraud is a massive problem. Obviously, we've discussed this. Unnecessary procedures are a massive problem too. Some estimates suggest that 30% of healthcare spending goes to services that are not needed, which, is not good. If insurers just paid every claim without scrutiny, the cost would explode, right? Even faster than they already are. And that would mean even higher premiums for everyone. So prior authorization and utilization review are supposed to be tools for making sure treatments are actually appropriate and evidence-based. In theory, this protects patients from unnecessary procedures and protects the insurance pool from being drained by wasteful spending. A conservative might point out that some friction in the system isn't necessarily a bad thing if it prevents the overutilization.
And that's a reasonable argument in theory. The problem is what happens in practice. Let me give you some numbers. In 2023, insurers selling plans on the Affordable Care Act marketplaces denied a combined average of 20% of all claims. That's 1 in 5 claims being rejected, guys. But here's what's wild. Of the 73 million in-network claims that were denied, only 1% were appealed. 1%. Most people either don't know that they can appeal, don't know how, or simply don't have the time and energy to fight. And when people do appeal, they often win. One analysis found that when denials go to external review, which is a federally mandated option where an independent third party reviews the case, about half of them are overturned. Half. That means half of those original denials were wrong, or at least defensible arguments could be made that they were wrong.
See, I told you 50-50. A study of emergency department visits found something even more striking. When one insurer denied visits as, and this is the term, non-emergent, this means that they said the patient didn't really need emergency care, those visits were still clearly emergencies more than 85% of the time by the prudent layperson standard. That's a legal standard that says if a reasonable person would think that they were having an emergency, it should be covered as an emergency. Simple, right? The idea that someone who came to the emergency room thought they were having an emergency. I mean, I once bumped heads with somebody, and if I could have fixed the severe gash in my forehead that ended up needing 10 stitches, if I could have fixed that with a beer and some gauze, trust me, I would have. If people didn't look at my head and make that face like the painting Scream, It means that they were a gas, folks. It's like that Home Alone face with the hands on the cheeks. I totally wouldn't have gone because who wants to go to the emergency room and wait 2 hours to be seen?
2 hours is generous.
4 hours, 6 hours? Yeah,
Right.
these are all the same stories. The fact that they're saying people just want to go to the emergency room just to visit is ridiculous. And again, they were wrong 85% of the time, naturally. And American hospitals get denied billions in inpatient claims every year. And this is about $260 billion annual. Now, hospitals, well, they eventually recover about half of that through appeals and negotiations. But the process itself costs an additional $118 per claim. That's just pure administrative waste. The money spent fighting over bills instead of providing actual emergency care.
Well, here's a story that captures the absurdity. A man in Los Angeles, let's call him Dean.
Indeed.
Yep. Well, he had a heart procedure to treat an arrhythmia that was causing him to faint with a heart rate of 300 beats per minute.
Sounds normal.
Yeah, 300. Totally fine. That's a medical emergency by any definition. The procedure costs $143,000. And Dean had gotten pre-approval from his insurer before the surgery. The insurance company had already said yes, but then they denied the claim afterward. The denial letter said the claim was rejected because he had asked for coverage for injections into nerves in your spine that were not medically needed. Injections into a spine for a heart procedure. It was completely and wildly wrong. Months later, after dozens of calls and help of a patient advocate, the situation still wasn't resolved. This isn't fraud in the criminal sense, but is it honest? Is it ethical? Is it what you expect when you pay your premiums every month?
So you want to hear an even more ridiculous case?
Go for it.
In another case, an insurer sent a denial letter directly to a newborn child.
Newborn?
Like, just addressed to the baby.
Cool.
And
they
it
can
was
read.
rejecting coverage for this baby's 4th day in neonatal intensive care.
Damn, welcome to the world, baby.
A baby in the NICU. And the insurance company decided, day 4 was too many days. Hey, baby, get out, baby. Man up or woman up. As if getting yanked out of the coziest spot on earth and put into blinding light wasn't traumatic enough. So who's reviewing these claims? Is anyone actually looking at them, or are they just running through an algorithm that spits out babies' names? Which brings us to a big elephant in the room.
Okay, Gabriel. I know we're trying to keep this balanced and not too heavy, so let me start with something kind of funny. Okay. In 2020, a study estimated that automated processing of claims saves U.S. insurers more than $11 billion annually. $11 billion. That's a lot of money not spent on humans reviewing claims. And in principle, automation isn't bad. If a computer can instantly approve a straightforward claim that would have taken a human worker 3 days to process, well, in theory, that's good for everyone. The patient gets their claim paid faster. The insurer saves money on administrative costs. Everyone wins. Problem is when the same automation is used to deny claims at scale without meaningful human review in ways that would never survive scrutiny if someone actually looked at them.
So it's about time we talk about United Healthcare and this lawsuit because it has become a flashpoint to this whole debate. To back up, in November 2023, the families of 2 deceased United Healthcare customers filed a class action lawsuit. They allege that United Health uses an AI tool called NH Predict, developed by a subsidiary called Navi Health, to deny claims for post-acute care. That's things like nursing home stays and home health care after you leave the hospital. This is important stuff. So according to the lawsuit, this AI model predicts how long a patient, quote unquote, should need post-acute care based on their diagnosis, age, living situation, and physical function. And I love the term physical function because it just makes us seem like machines. And then United Healthcare uses those predictions to cut off payment, even when that patient's actual doctors say they need more care. Now, the lawsuit claims that AI has a 90% error rate, which means it's trained that way or it's just as dumb as virtual rocks. Meaning, when patients appeal these AI-generated denials, 9 out of 10 times the denial gets reversed, which is just, goes without saying, that's absolutely mad.
Yeah. Well, now obviously United Health disputes this. They say NH Predict is just a guide to help inform providers and families about what care a patient might need, not a tool for making coverage decisions. They say actual coverage decisions are made by clinical staff based on Medicare criteria and plan terms. And look, I want to be fair. We haven't seen the internal documents, and the lawsuit is still ongoing. It's possible the plaintiffs are overstating their case. But here's what we do know. In February of 2025, a federal judge allowed the lawsuit to proceed. The judge found that UnitedHealth's claims denial process could be considered futile for patients trying to exhaust administrative remedies before suing. The judge noted that UnitedHealth allegedly issues repeated denials anytime a patient is successful on appeal. So even when you win, another denial is right behind it. And that's concerning.
And of course, UnitedHealthcare is not alone.
Nope.
Cigna was sued in 2023 for allegedly using an algorithm called PXDX, not a workout supplement.
It's not P90X?
No, it does not give you abs.
I did try that.
Oh, how did that work for you?
I quit.
Yeah, no, worked out well.
Yep.
So this system enabled doctors to automatically deny payments, and these are big batches. So batches of hundreds and thousands of claims at a time for treatments that didn't match what they thought was preset criteria. So Cigna uses the system and actually approves most claims automatically, and it doesn't use AI. Humana faced similar accusations. So whether or not these specific lawsuits succeed, they're drawn attention to a broader trend, increasing use of technology to make coverage decisions faster and cheaper. Always faster and always cheaper. And sometimes this is at the expense of accuracy and fairness. Not surprising. It also seems that what they're doing is they're making really grumpy AI. Like it's like the AI is like one of those annoying people who keeps telling you how they never get sick. And this creates a really uncomfortable dynamic. The insurance company has what they would call sophisticated AI and armies of claim processors. So the patient has what? A phone, maybe a pile of medical bills they don't understand. And I mean, I guess whatever time they can carve out between their work and their family obligations, and they have to navigate an appeals process that they've never dealt with before. Have you ever seen how quickly they send out those collections? Like you receive one notice and they treat you like you're a degenerate. And, you know, they're like, you trying to duck me? They talk to you as if they're about to send somebody with a crowbar to your house. Do we think for a moment that these doctor offices aren't getting paid great money just to send these to a collection agency who's then going to inflate the amount that you owe? Pay that amount or forever have something on your credit report, which is going to affect nearly every purchase you'll make for the rest of your life.
I mean, true story. I just had to pay for a procedure that I paid upfront and then got this notice saying, this is your last notice, you are past due. And I had to reach out and be like, do you not see right here where this $300 is not applied to my account? What are you talking about? I didn't pay. They're like, oh, oops, my bad. Really?
Well, you're the 9 out of 10. And that's the thing. They scare you with collections.
Well, they hadn't met me yet.
Immediately.
Well, I won that war. Anyway, a Senate investigation in October of 2024 found that UnitedHealthcare's prior authorization denial rate for post-acute care jumped from 10.9% in 2020 to 22.7% in 2022. So that more than doubled in 2 years. UnitedHealthcare responded that the report mischaracterizes the Medicare Advantage program and our clinical practices. But doubling your denial rate in 2 years raises obvious questions. Did patients suddenly start requesting twice as much unnecessary care? Or did the criteria for necessary change? Or did the tools for detecting and denying claims get more aggressive?
Now, I want to offer the other side here because there is another side.
Always is.
The more conservative argument, and it's certainly not crazy, is that prior authorization exists because healthcare spending is absolutely out of control. And someone has to be the adult in the room saying no. Doctors have financial incentives to provide more care, not less. Hospitals have financial incentives to keep patients longer, not shorter. Drug companies, we know, have incentives to push expensive new medications over cheaper generics. So if insurers just rubber stamp every request, costs are gonna spiral. Now, from this perspective, denials aren't evil. They're necessary. They have to check on a system prone to overutilization. The problem is when that pendulum swings too far, when the quote-unquote utilization review becomes deny first, ask questions later. When they design an AI program that says no as automatically as a parent who gets asked, can I have ice cream? So with your kid, just like this AI, it's No. Immediate no. Immediate no. Immediate no. Is it your birthday? Okay, maybe. So I guess in this case, if it is your birthday, you may just get something that saves your life or, I don't know, sets the bone right.
And honestly, both things can be true at the same time. We probably do have some overutilization in American healthcare. And we probably also have insurers denying legitimate claims to boost their bottom line. The system is screwed up in multiple directions simultaneously, which, if you think about it, it's kind of impressive. Like, we managed to create a healthcare system that's both wasteful and stingy. That takes talent.
Well, you know America's a overachieving nation.
All right. We've thrown a lot of numbers and legal cases at you, so let's talk about what this actually means for us real people. Because behind every denied claim statistic is a person. Usually a person who's already dealing with being sick or injured, which is stressful enough without having to fight their insurance company. The Kaiser Family Foundation did a survey and found that roughly a quarter of consumers whose claims were denied experienced significant delays in getting medical care. About the same proportion were unable to receive care at all. And about a quarter of those people said their health actually declined as a result. So we're not just talking about the inconvenience or frustrations that come with it. We're talking about people getting sicker or not getting better because of insurance denials.
Because as we know, stress is great for the health.
Right.
Now, so one of the plaintiffs in the United Healthcare lawsuit was a 74-year-old man. Now, this is not a fun story. He suffered a stroke. His doctors prescribed at least 100 days of post-acute care, like you might need after a stroke. After 20 days at it was a skilled nursing facility, United Healthcare denied additional coverage. They said 20 days, that's enough, sir. His wife appealed and won. Great. But after 40 days, they denied coverage again, claiming he was ready for discharge. Over 10 months, his healthcare costs exceeded $70,000 out of pocket. He ended up dying in October 2023 at an assisted living facility. Now, I'm not saying that insurance denials killed the guy. Strokes are serious, and many stroke patients do not recover. But imagine being his wife. Imagine fighting with an insurance company over and over while your husband is declining. Imagine watching the bills pile up. Imagine wondering if more care might have helped, but you couldn't afford it because the coverage you had been paying for just wasn't there when you actually needed it.
Stories like this are everywhere if you look for them. A mother shares online that her daughter needed inpatient mental health treatment. The insurance company denied it. The mother took money from her own mother's death inheritance money and spent $60,000 to get her daughter help. The insurance agent apparently told her, well, if she dies, you can kick her off your coverage and she can go on Medicaid and then they can pay. If she dies, that was the solution that they offered? Another person with a chronic condition that requires specific medication watches as their insurer suddenly just stops covering it. They're told they have to go through a step therapy process, trying cheaper medications first, even though they've already found what works, before the insurer will consider covering what they actually need. These aren't hypotheticals. These are real people sharing real experiences.
And here's something that doesn't get talked about enough, by the way. The mental health. Having a serious illness is already psychologically devastating, obviously, for many people. Adding a bureaucratic fight on top of it, the phone calls, the forms, the denials, then the appeals, the uncertainty, you're not sure if you're going to be able to afford the care. That makes everything worse. It goes without saying, or I guess I should say it, studies have shown that insurance-related stress correlates with worse health outcomes, again, very predictably. You're literally making people sicker by making them fight. One woman described the process of appealing her insurance denials as having a second job. Except this job doesn't pay you. It costs you in time and energy and sanity. And guess what? We've all been there. When you're sick, you might not have any of those things.
Now, to be fair, and we keep coming back to this because fairness does matter, not every denied claim is legitimate. Some claims are fraudulent. Some treatments really aren't medically necessary. The plural of anecdote is not data. For every horror story about an unjust denial, the insurance company could probably point to a case where denying coverage was the right call. The problem is the scale and the asymmetry. When an insurer wrongly denies a claim, the burden falls entirely on the patient to fight it. When an insurer wrongly pays a claim, they just absorb it as a cost of doing business. There's no individual patient who has to spend months fighting to get money back that was incorrectly paid to a provider. So the system is structurally tilted toward denying first and making you prove that they're wrong.
All right, so we've painted a pretty grim picture here.
Yep.
We're talking Bambi levels of grim here. Let's talk about what's actually being done. We're going to be positive because people are trying to fix this. States have been leading the charge on regulating prior authorization. So as of early 2025, more than a dozen states were considering measures that would limit the use of AI in reviewing claims. Good idea. It would require faster decisions on prior authorization, and it would give insurance regulators more authority to overturn denials. So Pennsylvania, for example, created a program where the state insurance department can directly review certain denials. In its first year, they overturned half of the 517 denials they reviewed. Again, half. Half seems to be the magic number here. That's 259 people who would have been stuck with denials if not for this program. It's all about having an advocate because most people do not have that.
And this is one area where we're actually seeing some bipartisan cooperation, which is quite frankly refreshing. Prior authorization reform isn't really a left-right issue. Doctors across the political spectrum hate it. Patients across the political spectrum hate it. Even some insurers acknowledge the current system has problems. The American Medical Association survey found that 93% of doctors said prior authorization delayed necessary care for their patients. 29% said delays had led to serious adverse events, hospitalization, permanent injury, or in some cases, even death. When 93% of doctors agree on something, maybe it's worth listening to. A Republican state representative in North Carolina is pushing a prior authorization bill. It's not just Democrats.
There's also a growing right to appeal movement. The idea is that if insurance companies are going to use this AI and other algorithms, patients should have a clearer, faster, and more accessible way to challenge those denials, right? So we're fighting computer with computer. Some advocates are pushing for automatic external reviews of certain types of denials. So instead of the patient having to request a review, certain denials would automatically get a second look from an independent party to keep it fair. Others are pushing for more transparency, and this is going to mean requiring insurers to disclose their denial rates, disclose their appeal overturn rates, and disclose the criteria they use for coverage decisions. This is going to make them naked. The theory is that the sunlight is the best disinfectant, and if insurers know their practices will be publicly scrutinized, they might be more careful about their aggressive denials.
And from a more conservative perspective, there's interest in expanding health savings accounts and high deductible plans. The idea that if people have more skin in the game and more control over their healthcare dollars, they'll be more cost-conscious consumers. This reduces the role of insurance companies as gatekeepers, which some see as a feature, not a bug. If you're paying out of your own HSA for routine care, you don't need prior authorization for a doctor's visit. You just go. The insurance kicks in for catastrophic stuff. It's a different model, and it has trade-offs. But it's worth mentioning as an alternative approach that some people genuinely believe would work better.
On the other end, progressives continue to push for more fundamental reforms. Medicare for all, public option, single-payer systems. The argument here is that profit motive is inherently incompatible with healthcare. And as long as insurance companies are trying to maximize shareholder value, and they are required to do this, they'll always have incentives to deny the care. Remove the profit motive, and you remove the incentive to deny. Countries with single-payer systems don't have prior authorization fights in the same way. Now, of course, they have other problems. There's wait times, there's rationings, there's bureaucracy of a different kind. So no system is perfect, but the frustration driving these proposals is very, very real.
And then there's the technological response. A software engineer named Holden Corral created a free service called Fight Health Insurance that uses AI, ironically, to help people craft appeal letters for denied claims. The idea is to fight fire with fire. If insurers are using AI to deny claims, then patients should be able to use AI to appeal them. She created it after her own frustrating experiences with insurance denials, including her pet insurer initially refusing to pay for anesthesia for her dog's root canal, which honestly is kind of hilarious and sad at the same time. Even freaking dogs can't catch a break.
So let's zoom out for a second and look at the larger picture. because I think it's important to understand how we got to a place where, again, an insurance CEO getting murdered became, I don't want to say popular, but there's no other word for the public reaction. I don't think I could say with a straight face or without a laughing emoji. This was a popular event. So you either cheered, you less defiantly cheered, you jeered, but a lot were just apathetic. If anything, perhaps this apathy is the worst outcome. The United States spends more on healthcare per capita than any other country in the whole world. Way more. We're talking about 4.3 trillion in total healthcare spending. I couldn't even tell you how many zeros are in 1 trillion right now if you put me on the spot. I'm gonna guess, is it 12? I have a 50-50 chance of being right.
Should be a field sobriety test question.
Just as long as I don't have to say the ABCs backwards again. Yeah. And for that money, we get middling results. Life expectancy is lower than in most other wealthy nations. Infant mortality is higher. We hear of all these things all the time. We have worse outcomes on a whole range of measures. And yet, individual Americans, especially those without good employer coverage, they can't even afford basic care. Something like 40% of American adults carry medical debt. A third can't cover an emergency expense of $400 or more. We are truly living paycheck to paycheck in a medical emergency. This might as well be a death sentence, literally and figuratively.
Meanwhile, the top health insurance CEOs are making tens of millions of dollars a year. Andrew Whitty at United Health Group, $26.4 million in 2024. David Cordani at Cigna, $23.3 million. And again, the CEO to median worker pay ratio at these companies ranges from about 200 to 1 to 370 to 1. Now, you can argue about whether any CEO is worth that kind of money, but here's what is undeniable. There's a visceral disconnect between insurance executives making $26 million while patients are fighting for coverage, going bankrupt for medical bills, or dying because they can't afford medication. Whether or not that's the executive's fault, they didn't create the system, they're just operating within it. The optics are terrible, and optics matter. Public trust matters.
Here I'll be a contrarian, and I want to push back a little on the simplistic narrative, I guess, because it's easy to make insurance company CEOs the villains, right? They're rich. They run companies that deny the claims. The story writes itself. The reality is more complicated. As always, insurance company profit margins are actually not that high compared to other industries. They typically run in the 3 to 5% range. The big money in healthcare isn't just going to insurance companies, it's going to hospitals, to drug companies, to medical device manufacturers, to doctors. I've seen the paychecks. Again, I've done a mortgage. The rest goes to the whole ecosystem of all these middlemen. Pharmacy benefit managers, for example, are these largely invisible companies that negotiate the drug prices between the insurers and the pharmacies, and they capture billions in fees. The insurance CEOs are easy targets, obviously, but they're not the only ones getting rich off the system. This infection runs much deeper than that. So just like Ticketmaster, perhaps we're being a little harsh. You know how everybody hates Ticketmaster?
They do.
But the fact is, the margins are actually pretty small. It's everybody else that's charging a lot to them. Not that I defend Ticketmasters. Just saying, they're only like 15% evil, and maybe the CEOs are too.
Well, that's true. And it's worth noting that insurance companies do provide a service. They pool risk. They negotiate rates with providers. They provide access to networks of doctors and hospitals. The question isn't whether insurance serves any function, because it clearly does. It's whether the current system serves the function well and at what cost. Are we getting good value for what we're paying? Are the incentives aligned correctly? Is the system designed to help patients or to extract maximum revenue from them? These are legitimate questions, and people of good faith can disagree on the answers.
What's not really debatable is that public trust in the health insurance industry is at rock bottom. This thing has hit such a rock bottom that at this point, he needs an intervention. When 57,000 people react to a CEO's death with laughing emojis, I mean, it's not normal, right?
No.
That's not just a few bad actors or internet trolls. That's a broad, deep well of anger. And anger like that doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from millions of individual experiences. It comes from denied claims and surprise bills and fights with customer service and watching loved ones struggle. Each one of those experiences is a new data point. You add them up and you get all this. A system that a significant portion of the public views not as a safety net, but as an adversary, as an enemy.
So where does this leave us? We've talked about fraud, the criminal kind and the technically legal kind. We've talked about denial patterns in AI algorithms. We've talked about real people whose lives were upended by insurance decisions. We've tried to present both sides, the legitimate concerns about overutilization and cost control, and the equally legitimate concerns about a system that seems designed to avoid paying claims. And the truth, as usual, is messy. The system is broken in multiple ways simultaneously. There's too much fraud and too many legitimate claims being denied. There's wasteful spending and people who can't afford necessary care. There are insurance companies gaming the system and providers gaming the system, and patients sometimes gaming the system too. Nobody's hands are completely clean in this.
Oh boy, that was a mouthful.
Yes, it
so,
was.
in our final episode, we're going to bring this all together, and I promise, by looking at the Mangione case itself.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence, the trial, the defense strategy, his fresh haircut. We're going to examine how he became a folk hero to most and a villain probably to less. And we're going to ask some really uncomfortable questions about what this case reveals about American society in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Is violence ever justified? If one life is going to save many, many more, we're going to be clear about that. But why did so many people feel like it was? What does it mean when a significant portion of the public cheers for an accused murderer? And what happens when people lose faith that the system can be fixed through legitimate means? Those are the questions for episode 3.
And for now, we'll leave you with this thought. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. If our healthcare system is producing fraud, denials, bankruptcy, and public rage, maybe, just maybe, the system needs to be redesigned. The question is, redesigned how and by whom? And whether we can do it before more people get hurt?
This has been Mugshot Mysteries. I'm Gabriel.
And I'm Kathryn. Thanks for sticking with us through the heavy stuff, and we'll see you in episode 3. But before that, Gabriel, per usual, what have we learned?
We've learned that early Walt Disney movies were completely messed up, but there just wasn't enough variety, so we had to take a lifetime of childhood trauma. We've learned that you can train AI to behave like an old man on the lawn. When the pie is huge, everybody's going to try to get the biggest slice they can, and that when you can objectively state that something is broken, you should not be like me. Man, it's not that hard to tighten up that door handle.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Stolen gem, a secret note, a shady figure in a trench coat. The clock is ticking, the plot gets thick. We'll crack this puzzle quick as a click. Mugshot Mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Follow the breadcrumbs through the haze. Every clue's a piece in this crazy maze. Fun and thrills wrapped in crime. You'll love it every single time. Mugshot show.